Hey everyone, it's Josh. Welcome to Youth Night. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are going to have a little bit of a different show tonight, mix it up, keeping it fresh. So thankful that you are here. As we get started, you guys know, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get started. And we are back. Once again, welcome to Youth Night. My name is Josh. So excited to have you here with us tonight. Well, it is the start of a new year, and there's already been so much that has happened. This week, we have a new president, and just for some fun, we're going to jump into some new president trivia. So I'll be throwing out two questions for you. Throw your guesses or answers into the chat. All right, first one, here we go. The United States has had how many presidents, including Joe Biden? What number president is Joe Biden? Put the answers in the chat. I'm not even going to tell you. We'll let you know the correct answer when someone gets it or is close to it. But here is the second question. Our new current president's name is Joseph R. Biden. What does the R stand for? What is our president's middle name? Put your guesses, or if you happen to know it, in the comments now. For those two questions, we're going to give out some prizes. And moving on, let's go to some announcements. All right, it is time for the announcements.
What?
Okay, first off, like I said before, make sure you like, comment, subscribe this video, as well as make sure you are following us on the Annex Instagram page. Next week, we have a big event coming up. Instead of Youth Night here on YouTube, we're going to be doing our first ever one night at church. Now, one night is a monthly all-youth gathering that happens the last Sunday of every month at church, Grace Community Fellowship, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. This is for middle schoolers and high school students, and this one night has a theme, and that is Neon Night. We're going to be having some glow-in-the-dark games and fun, so make sure that you wear something neon or something white and bright. It's going to be a great night together. We're going to have free Papa's Pizza to everyone who shows up. Make sure that you bring a mask because we're going to be following all of our COVID protocols, but also make sure that you bring a friend with you because we want to have fun together. We're going to be having small groups in person, live worship, and just a blast together. So next Sunday, January 31st, I can't wait to see you at one night. Hey guys, like I said earlier, it is a new year and there's already so much that has been going on. This week we have a new president and vice president, and so switching things up tonight, we're going to spend a couple minutes together here on YouTube praying for our leaders. Do you know that the Bible actually commands us to pray for those who are in authority over us? That means people who are in the government, people who are our teachers, leaders, coaches, and even our parents. And I think that the Bible has to remind us to pray for these people because it's not always natural to do that. In fact, oftentimes it's so easy to criticize people who are in authority, whether that is our parents or the president, to look at the things that they are done wrong or could do better. Or sometimes we simply just gripe about all the things that they wish they would do or think differently, rules that they would change. But I think it's important for us to pray for our leaders. So we're going to take just a couple moments out of our night to pray for 3 different types of leaders in our lives. And I'm going to say a prayer, and then I'm going to give 30 seconds of silence for you to pray as well. You can pray out loud or in your head. If you're by yourself, you can pray by yourself. Or if there's other people in the room, you can pray with them as well. We're going to pray for our president and vice president. We're going to pray for our teachers and school leaders, and we're also going to pray for our parents and grandparents. Now, maybe you've prayed for those types of people before, maybe you haven't, but just know, no matter how you feel about them, whether you think they're doing a good job with their leadership authority or not, just know that they have an incredibly hard job. In fact, some of you know how hard of a job your parents have. And more than that, the Bible calls us to pray for these people and that God would give them wisdom and guide them because their actions impact all of us. And Jesus on the cross prayed for the very people who were killing him. So I think we can find it within ourselves to pray for our leaders no matter how we feel about them. So when we pray for our leaders, we're praying that God would give them wisdom, that God would, yes, even bless them, and that we would have a kind, humble, and even obedient heart towards them. Sometimes these prayers are difficult, but it brings us more in line with the heart of Jesus. All right, let's get going. Let's pray for our president and vice president. God, I pray for President Biden and Vice President Harris. Lord, as they enter office this week, I pray that you would give them a wisdom as they lead, as they step into just a very difficult year in which to lead, that you would give them courage and energy and strength. God, may they lead in a way that's beneficial to our nation, and may you bless them in all of the different tasks that they have to do. All right, it's your turn. All right, next we're going to pray for all of our teachers and school leaders. God, I lift up all of the teachers and school leaders, administrators to you. As school is just so weird and different and teachers are doing things over Zoom, I pray that you would just be with them, that you would give them wisdom to be able to teach well, to connect with students. I pray that you'd keep them safe, bless their families, and that you would give them the energy and strength every day to lead well. I pray for all of those who are making decisions about when school opens or closes and all the decisions to make. I pray you give them wisdom, that you would be with them, that you would give your strength and love to them as well. God, even though we may not always love school, we pray for those who make it possible for us to get an education and to learn. We're thankful for them. We pray for them right now. All right, our next prayer is for our parents. God, we lift our parents up to you. God, I pray for my parents that you would be with them this week and even tonight. God, that you would bless them, that you would guide their steps. Lord, as we think about our parents, we just think of all of the things that they mean to us and have done for us. And despite conflict or misunderstandings, God, we pray that we would love them more, be appreciative of the things that they have done for us, and pray that you would give them your wisdom, you give them your love and your strength, that any burdens that they are carrying, that they would give those to you. And God, there are so many specific things that might be going on in our family. They're difficult that we know of right now. And we also give those situations to you as well. That was great. Thank you so much for coming together in prayer as a group as we lift up those who lead and are in authority and as we head into our week and beyond. All right, here's what's next. Well, we are in a series called Vibes that is on emotions. And we're talking about how we can be less controlled by our emotions and more in control. And all the different ways that God can work in our lives and use our emotions for good. And tonight we are tackling fear. Fear is an emotion I know that all of us have felt probably pretty intensely this past year. Whether it was a friend or a family member who was sick with COVID, whether it was just fear of seeing all of the chaos and violence in our world, country, and state, or just a fear of uncertainty of the future. Fear is something that is so easy to grip our heart. So, what do we do when we are fearful or afraid? Let's find out.
I want to tell y'all a little story. I remember it was my junior year in high school, and I wanted to try out for the track team. And so I tried out, I made the team, and my coach wanted me to be a long distance runner. I wanted to do something more cool. I wanted to do the hurdles. And so I said, Coach, is there any way that I could do the hurdles in competition? And he said, well, you're 5'3". I don't know how good you're gonna be at that, but we can give it a try in practice. And so I was super geek. I had the thought of like, what if I'm really good at this? What if I get to go to the Olympics? All of the cool thoughts I had in regards to, running the hurdles. And so the coach let me do it. During practice, I was okay. And he gave me one opportunity to kind of compete in one of our semi-competitions. And so the day comes, and I literally start to panic. I had the thoughts of, what if I become the laughing stock if I'm not able to get over these hurdles? What if I fail? What if I just completely not do good? And I get to the track meet and I completely vomit. All over my suit, all over the floor, and I completely lose it. My coach comes over to me, he's like, Crystal, do you think you can do it? And I said, I think I can. So I get there, I'm on the track, and right before they go off with the starting pistol, I take a deep breath and I go. And listen, y'all, I missed every single one of the hurdles. It was the worst day ever for me. And that may not be your experience. Your experience may be different from mine. But the reality is this: we all have experienced fear in some shape or another. It may have kept us up from trying new things. It may have kept us from speaking up when we should have. It may have hurt our friendships. It may have created something that we say to ourselves in our own head that convinces us of things about ourselves that are not necessarily true. It may not be a scary movie type of fear that controls us, but it might be a type of fear that creates worry and anxiety in us that have a huge impact on our life. And I think it's pretty safe to say that fear is an emotion that we have all been controlled by in one way or another. The crazy thing about fear is that our ability to experience it is something that makes us uniquely human. Think about it for a second. Our fear comes from the fact that we can gather information and think about the future. And as humans, we can wonder those what if questions like I had. What if this happens, or what if that happens? And that can make us afraid. We are where we are today because the human race has been able to learn things, build on what we've learned, and then project it into the future. The same ability that allows us to fear also allows us to imagine, have hope and dream and wish for really great things to happen in our life. So our ability to gather information and think about the future has two sides, the fear side and the hope side. I think we will all agree that the hope side is incredible. We love imagining, dreaming, and inventing. But then we have the fear side, the side that comes up with all the what ifs. And we all know that the what ifs makes us feel a little bit crazy. We are in another week in this series called Vibes. We've been talking about our emotions and the way they affect us and the world around us. And fear is one emotion that we all experience in our lives. But here's what's cool about it all. Jesus had a lot to say about fear. The problem is we tend to read verses where he talks about fear by themselves. And when we do that, they sound nice, but they don't seem possible or even practical. For example, Jesus said, "Fear not." In other words, when it comes to fear, just stop and quit. That's not exactly helpful though, right? So today, I want to look at a passage where Jesus talks to some of his close friends about fear, but with a little bit more context for all of us to get to know and learn a little bit better. Jesus had 12 main followers who were also his friends. He spent a lot of time with them because he wanted to teach them and to encourage them to do great things in the world. And at one point, he tells them this: I'm going to send you out like sheep among wolves. Just think about it for a moment. Wolves are predators and sheep are prey. So Jesus is like, you guys are the prey and I'm going to let you loose with a bunch of predators. And then he goes and gets a little more literal. He tells them that they will also be arrested and beaten. And to wrap it all up, he tells them not to be afraid. I don't know about you, but I will be afraid. We tend to read the story and stop there. But when you look at it in its full context, this is just one part. Before this conversation, there's another time Jesus was out with his disciples. Jesus took his friends on a trip. They were on a boat in the middle of a sea in Galilee, and while they were there, Matthew recorded this. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. Jesus and his disciples are on a small boat in the middle of water, and without warning, a storm shows up. Think about it for a moment. The loud crashing from the waves, the wind that can literally blow you away, the rain that just keeps coming down, the bright lightning that lights up the sky full of dark clouds, and the thunder that shakes your chest. In the middle of it all, Matthew tells us that Jesus was sleeping. Can you imagine, just for one moment, either Jesus was faking it or he was actually in a real deep sleep? So as the disciples were scared out of their minds, as I would have been too, and their fearless leader was sleeping right through it, they did the same thing I think I would have done. They woke him up. Lord, save us. We are going to drown. Imagine just for a moment the disciples' frustration. They were trying to stay alive while Jesus was trying to take a power nap. This is how Jesus responds. You of little faith, why are you so afraid? Maybe Jesus was sleep talking? Because wouldn't it be obvious that they were afraid? I mean, who wouldn't be worried about dying? But Jesus was teaching them about fear. He wakes up and gets up, but he doesn't panic, which is good news for all of us. No matter how scary the circumstances, Jesus stays calm. Matthew says that Jesus spoke to the wind and the waves, and they calmed down. Now, the disciples were amazed. They responded by saying this: "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him?" In fact, they weren't just amazed, they were afraid. I mean, they literally asked, who is this guy who can calm down a storm? In a moment, their confidence in Jesus overwhelmed their fear of the storm. And that's the point of this field trip. Jesus took all of his disciples on to show them that their feeling of fear didn't have to control them or boss them around anymore. It was to show them that there is someone bigger and more capable. Jesus used the situation as a teaching moment. So let's go back to the conversation where Jesus says that he is going to send them out like sheep among wolves. Jesus follows that up by saying this: "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill your soul." In other words, if you are going to fear something, you might as well make sure it's the right thing or worth being afraid of. First, Jesus proves that God is bigger than the storm. Then he sends the disciples into dangerous situations like sheep among wolves. So, imagine yourself as one of the disciples. And Jesus in this moment then points out and is like, you were afraid of the wrong thing on the boat. Sure, you had the right to be afraid, but didn't you know that there was someone with you who was more powerful than the storm? Jesus goes on, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows." He's saying God is paying attention to you. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than the sparrows. Don't be afraid. God has numbered the hairs on your head. Don't be afraid. You are valuable. God is personal. He knows your name. He knows your circumstances. He's concerned with your personal life. When it comes to dealing with fear, this is a pretty big deal because God knows all about it and is with you in the middle of it. Now, the account continues with Jesus and the guys on another field trip. So check this out. Here's what happens. Jesus has been preaching all day. It started to get late and people were getting tired and hungry. The disciples suggest that they send everyone home to eat, but Jesus seems to think that they can feed everyone, which sounds a bit crazy because no one has enough food or money to make that happen. But then Jesus gets a little boy's lunch. That's right, a little boy's lunch out of his little lunch pail. He prays over it, and then Matthew writes that Jesus split the boy's lunch between 12 disciples and told them to feed the crowd. And listen, y'all, it worked. Everyone got fed. It was a complete miracle. But before they have time to stay and enjoy it, Jesus tells the disciples to get in another boat. And they are probably thinking, Jesus, this is too soon. But they had to do what Jesus said. So soon after that, they hopped into a boat. But this was a little bit different because Jesus doesn't get in the boat with them. He tells them that he'll meet them on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. So the disciples spends the night rowing, and at some point of the night, the waves get bigger and the wind blows wild. They looked over and around the water and can't believe what they see. It's Jesus walking on water. That is super wild, super crazy, and I can't even fathom that in my own mind. But Matthew records that the disciples were terrified. Obviously, right? Someone walking on water. In fact, they thought they were seeing a ghost. But then Jesus says something that gets their attention because they had heard it before. He goes to say, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." This is Jesus trying to remind them of all the lessons and field trips they've already had previously up to this point. They saw miracles, heard teachings, and yet still fear was in control of them. In fact, they remained fearful to the very end of Jesus' life. When we fast forward to the night that Jesus was arrested, we see the disciples abandon Jesus. Why, you might ask? Because they were afraid that if they stayed close by, they might be arrested too. And then Jesus was crucified. Were they there? No, they left because they were afraid. The next day after Jesus was buried, where were the disciples, you might ask? They were hiding in a room because they were afraid. But then Sunday came around, and the women who had followed Jesus went to the tomb and discovered that it was empty. They came back and told all the disciples, so the disciples went to the tomb, saw that the tomb was empty, and they thought to themselves, maybe someone stole the body. But then Jesus himself appeared before them, and they realized that he's alive. And here's the deal. When the guy you've been following dies and then comes back to life, suddenly everything he has to say to you before seems more real, true, and even more believable. For the disciples who loved and followed Jesus, the resurrection wasn't just a nice surprise. It was everything. It made them bold. It gave them strength. It put everything Jesus said about fear in its right perspective. Their world was crazy still, but because of the resurrection, the disciples and anyone who followed Jesus could put their fear in its place. It was like they finally understood the lessons from the boat. When all the things around them seemed so much bigger and so much scarier than they could handle themselves, now Jesus' words made sense. Fear not, I am with you, took on a whole new meaning. We know this to be true because after the resurrection, the disciples came out of hiding. They didn't run away from what scared them. Instead, they walked boldly into situations that God had called them to. And these followers of Jesus ended up changing our whole world because they started to live as though they believed what Jesus had told them over the course of their time together. Fear not. They were not afraid of anything, not even death, because they followed a man who had died and came back to life. And all of a sudden, nothing seemed as scary anymore. Not because there was nothing to be afraid of, but because there was a God who was clearly bigger than any of their biggest fears. The thing is this, we all know that fear will always be a part of our experience. Fear is a part of what makes us human, and it will always be there to some degree. But we don't have to live like fear is in charge of us and telling us what to do. There's a guy by the name of Peter who was one of Jesus's closest friends. He was there with Jesus during the miracles on the boat rides. You know, the guy who promised that he wouldn't deny knowing Jesus, then denied him 3 times. The one that panicked when Jesus was arrested. Also the one that hid in fear after Jesus died. Yeah, that guy. But that same Peter gives us some tips about fear after he witnessed Jesus came back to life. In a letter he wrote to Christians who never had the chance to meet Jesus, this is what he had to say. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. When Peter says cast, he means throw as hard as you can. That's an action word. That means it doesn't happen by accident. When you feel anxiety, fear, or worry, take all of it and throw it at Jesus. This is the most important part. Peter experienced this firsthand in the 3 years he spent with Jesus. We throw our fears on him because he cares for us. You can also remember it this way. Because of Jesus, fear doesn't have to be the boss of you. So here's what I want you to do. When fear becomes the vibe that takes over your life and starts to control how you act, I want you to do this. First, name whatever it is that you are afraid of. Say it out loud. Put words all around it. What about it makes you afraid? What have you been through that makes you feel afraid? And the second thing, I want you to then talk to God. You can say something like, Jesus, I am throwing this fear towards you because I personally can't handle it. I am giving you my fear of trying to do everything right. Maybe the fear of trying to not be afraid of the dark anymore. Maybe it's the fear of not having so many friends. Whatever that fear is that you're dealing with, I want you to fill it in that blank and say, you care for me. And even though it doesn't always feel like it, I'm choosing to believe that you are bigger than any fear that I face. Because you faced death and came back to life, I can trust that you can handle any fear that I bring to you. So as we wrap up today, I hope you'll remember that these vibes, feelings, and emotions that we have don't have to control us, especially fear. They were never meant to make us who we are. They are, however, invitations to pay attention. So while we can learn from our emotions, we need to know that because of Jesus, they don't have to be the boss of us. So hey, here it is. The thing we face and the fear we feel can be a lot to handle. I get it, especially on our own, but it doesn't have to be that way. That's why small groups are so important. It's a place where you can share what you're actually going through with people who might be going through something similar. Being vulnerable with those around you and letting others be vulnerable with you opens a door and is one way we can decide not to let fear control us and to choose something way better. And that's hope. To experience hope for yourself and to give hope to others is incredible. So this week, try talking to a pastor, a friend, a small group leader, or a trusted adult about one fear you may be feeling. And I encourage you to try sharing that with your group. Then and only then, you can be bold and courageous to help each other. Fear not, my friends.
All right, right, that was a great message and something that I really enjoyed learning from as well. We are about to head into small groups. Different small groups are going to be meeting digitally after Youth Night ends. So if you want more information about where your group is meeting, or if you want to join a small group for the first time, make sure that you put something in the chat, and one of our moderators will make sure that you have all the information that you need. Small groups are an incredible place to connect with other people your age, as well as with an incredibly loving and caring and wise small group leader. They're a place to be open and honest about what's really going on in your life. It's a place to wrestle and tackle with the truths that we hear here at Youth Night in the messages, as well as it's a place of encouragement and inspiration to head into tomorrow and the next week on fire for God. All right, so before we head into small groups, a couple of questions that I want to throw out that you guys can respond to in the chat. As we're talking about fear, there are many things that I'm afraid of, but I think that one of the most is spiders. I can't stand spiders. Marcy has to kill all the spiders in our house. I know I'm a wimp, I'm sorry, but my question to you is, which one makes you more afraid? Snakes or spiders? Let me know right now in the chat. Snakes or spiders? All right, thanks for commenting. I don't care how many of you guys said snakes. Spiders will always be more terrifying. They just are. They have 8 legs. It's gross. All right, I loved tonight's message, and I loved the verse that talked about casting all of our anxiety, all of our fear on Jesus. Because really, as we're talking about emotions, that it is a close relationship with Jesus that replaces the fear in our life. And it's following and trusting in Jesus that changes our hearts and replaces the fear in our lives. So one final question for you before we head to small groups. There are times when all of us are afraid for many different reasons, and there is a God who loves us and wants to replace that fear. So what is something that you would like to see replacing fear in your life in one word? Let me see it in the comments now. All right, thanks for commenting. Thank you so much for tuning into Youth Night. We are heading to small groups, and I cannot wait to see you next week at One Night. I'm praying for all of you. I love you. Hope you have an incredible week and small group time. Bye, buddies.